Can everybody hear me?
Yes.
Yeah. So
Yes.
just let's give a few more minutes, maybe a few couple of seconds. People are still joining. Currently, we have more than 100 participants who have already joined. Maybe within a couple of seconds we will start. Okay, let me start this webinar. Welcome to all the participants who have joined. We got the registration of more than 300 for this interesting webinar on COVID crisis and its impact on FPO, and can we use this for as an opportunity to provide the more role for FPOs. As part of this webinar, we need to understand why we are organizing this. We have seen that due to COVID-19 crisis, there has been limited agricultural activities because of several reasons, including shortage of labor, and there is also limited access of agricultural inputs by farmer. Coupled with these two, we also have restricted movement of farm produce from one location to another, and thus limited marketing or sale of produce. As many of us know, there are more than 5,000 FPOs in India, but majority of them are facing different types of problem, and they are not able to undertake activities smoothly at an optimum scale. And magnitude of the challenges across these FPOs vary depending upon what kind of activities FPOs are engaged in. But despite all these problems, many of the FPOs are able to function by way of leveraging their established relationships, networks, and resources. Along with that, there is also some government support being made available to the overall agriculture sector and FPO in particular, and they relate to facilitating marketing of farm produce by way of FPO engagement through ENAM, which is an electronic platform for agricultural marketing. And government has also established a centralized control system for transporting essential goods and other farm produce. So this is the background of this webinar. What we are going to do in this webinar, the key discussion points, we would try to discuss various important points during this webinar. We will try to understand how this COVID is impacting FPO operations and what is the magnitude of those problems, how we can improve performance or operations of FPOs, how we can use various available resources for undertaking various activities, including farm operations, transportation, storage, and marketing of farm produce, including processing of various farm produce. We will also try to discuss how various FPOs are leveraging various government support programs to create productive assets in rural areas for prosperous rural economy. And as a result, how we can, convert this COVID-19 crisis into an opportunity for agriculture reform and, FPOs and for inclusive growth. The purpose of this webinar is to exchange ideas as to how sector in general and FPOs in particular are leveraging various resources and relationships and converting this, COVID-19 crisis into an opportunity. With us, we have 4 panel members. Mr. Arindam Datta, who is Executive Director and Head of Rabo India Securities Private Limited. Arindam has been with Rabobank Foundation or Rabobank for about 13 years. Previously, he worked with NABARD, CARE and IDBI Bank. Overall, he has got 28 years of experience, primarily in rural finance, agribusiness banking, and microfinance. He is very passionate about agri-tech startups that are emerging now, and he wants to understand how these new startups can play a significant role for smallholder farmers. He is also an independent director of NavKisan, which is a subsidiary of NABARD, and he is a member of National Advisory Committee on NABARD for FPO fund. With us, we have a very eminent and renowned practitioners and policy maker, Mr. Pravesh Sharma ji. He has more than 3 decades of experience. He worked as an IAS officer for around 34 years. Recently, he established an agri startup called Kamatan Farm Tech Private Limited. Before that, he was MD, a small farmer agribusiness consortium, Government of India. He is also a board member of DCM Sriram Limited. With us, we have our third, panel member, Mr. Reddy, who is finding it difficult to join, but I hope he will be able to join very soon. Mr. Reddy has about 30 years of experience, mainly in microfinance and livelihoods. And he has contributed quite a lot for the SG movement in India, women SG movement in India. And he has worked with a large number of different, state governments and also Government of India. Then we have our 4th panel member, Mr. Mark. He is from an organization in Myanmar called DZRB. It's a German cooperative and Rapsen Confederation, which is an apex body of cooperatives. So we have very eminent panel member with us today for this webinar, and they will contribute their experience. They will share their experience as to how FPOs are coping with during this crisis. Let me just briefly touch upon the webinar format. Of course, we had thought that Mr. C.S. Reddy will be one of the speaker who will start first, but let's see how it happens. He is going to talk about experience of an FPO federation called Tea Tomato and how it has undertaken collective marketing of fruits and various vegetables. Along with that, he will also share some of the policy ideas in this new normal which has emerged due to COVID-19 for FPO. Then with us, Mr. Mark, he will discuss about various challenges that farmers organizations and cooperative in Myanmar are facing during this COVID crisis, and what kind of coping strategies they have adopted to continue their operations. Rabo ji will, Arindam Datta from Rabo will discuss about, and share his experience about various financing challenges faced by FPOs and what could be possible solution both in short term and medium term to make FCs more, resilient by adopting, technology. Sri Pravesh Sharma ji, he will talk about a forward-looking, framework, and he will talk about opportunity during this COVID-19 crisis to roll out an ambitious reform agenda for agriculture and also for FPO for more inclusive growth and key role FPO can play. Then followed by this presentation and experience sharing, we will have participant questions and comments and feedback. Now let me start with Mr. Mark because we will be, as I said, CS Reddy will join soon, I hope.
I'm already there.
You are already there, okay.
Yeah.
I can't see your video.
Maybe that's a view problem.
I can see your video, so it seems to be fine.
Okay, you can go ahead, Reddy ji, in sharing your presentation.
Okay, so you maybe
Please go ahead.
Your screen share, Ashok, so that I can do my screen share.
Yeah.
Okay. So
yeah. So now I can see you. Yeah, please go ahead, Reddy ji.
So good afternoon, everyone. I am delighted to be part of this webinar organized by M-CRIL, and I am really thankful to them for hosting a topic that is so important. Maybe without taking too much time, I'm talking predominantly about tomatoes. So this picture is about tomato market in Madanapalli, which is one of the largest tomato markets in Asia. And the M-Tomato FPO Federation, just to give you an idea, it has around 7,173 informal groups, village level farmers association, some registered, some unregistered under the Mutually Aided Cooperative Societies Act. And then we have a sub-district level federation, the FPO. Some are registered as producer companies and some are registered as mutually aided cooperative societies. These are federated together into what we call as the M-Tomato FPO Federation, which is registered as a producer company. So it's a very interesting model where you have the members of the federation are cooperatives and also producer companies. And what we have done in the past 1 month is what I'm kind of planning to share. Just to give one or two quick background. So the APMAS has been working with GIZ in implementing the Green Innovation Center project. And so there, the M-Tomato FPO Federation has been supported. So at the bottom level, the informal groups are almost 4 years old. Village level associations, maybe 3.5 years. Mandal level federations, anywhere between 3 years to 2.5 years. And the Tomato Federation at the apex level, which is a cluster of 9 geographic areas, is around 1 year, which was registered in February 2019. So they have a 0.4 million rupees, and they are in output marketing. They have partnerships with Coromandel as an agency, dealership, and they also work with NCDEX and work with the tomato processing industry called Sunsip Agro Processors. So, in addition to tomato, we also deal with mango, other vegetables like all the gourds. So this is just a picture to give you an idea. In fact, we have supplied mangoes and sweet lime to Azadpur Mandi in Delhi for marketing through the FPO. In terms of the collective marketing, again, we have done almost 2,000 metric tons of supply of tomato for processing to two industries. One is the Sunsip, second is called Foods and Inns. Both are nearer to Bangalore city. We also supplied significant quantity of fruits and vegetables to Aurobindo Pharma, a pharmaceutical company, for providing these fruits and vegetables to their employees who have been working during these COVID times. And NCDEX platform, we have also supplied to the retail chains, Big Basket, more, and also some sales locally during these COVID times. So just to give you an idea, they have done around 2,300 metric tons of fruits and vegetables of around 1,012 farmers with a total value of 156 lakhs or 15.6 million rupees. So that's the kind of turnover that they have done in a period of a little over a month. And I just wanted, this is not what I'm planning to explain, but I wanted to show you that APMAS runs an FPO incubation center, which provides institution development and business development services to the members. So, and this is kind of part of our organizational approach that by the year 2025, we should be working with around 100 FPOs who becomes compliant and sustainable business organizations. In fact, it's interesting that we already are touching around 100 FPOs. For them to become self-reliant and sustainable, it will take time. In terms of the what makes the FPOs promoted by APMAS Clic, I think our work over the past 18 years on self-help groups has helped us in a big way. We also lay a tremendous amount of emphasis on cooperative values and principles as the foundation for the farmers' organization. The third important factor is about women leadership.
Your voice is breaking, Reddy Saab.
40% of the FPO members who are women. Okay. And then the APMAS has a strong partnership. It has facilitated with the private sector and FPO. And the FPOs promoted and supported by APMAS have also leveraged various schemes from government and donor funds, particularly in the form of equity grant. Ashok, is that okay?
Yeah, well, I think, you know, your voice is breaking a bit in between. But yeah, please go ahead.
Okay. This is one of the farm development center, which is an input shop set up by the FPO in partnership with Refresh, which is an agribusiness company in their operational area. We also have developed a number of self-learning modules on the governance, management, and system development of the farmer production. So I think we believe that training and capacity building is central the FPOs for them to become self-reliant and sustainable. In terms of the way forward, the way I would like to highlight through this webinar is that FPOs are still at a nascent stage in the country, and many of them who have had some support from the promoting agency have done well in the COVID times, in spite of the lockdown, in spite of the prices of the commodities dropping by almost a third, and in spite of transportation bottlenecks, in spite of the fear that many drivers stopped coming to the FPOs to transport the commodities. So, but still, the FPOs, with the support of GIZ and APMAS, have done well, particularly the M-Tomato FPO Federation. So, just in terms of some ideas for the consideration of the panel and for the participants, in terms of practice and policy. One, I think, important during this COVID times is FPOs need capital. I think capital is critical, whether it is capital in the form of equity grant or in the loans. That's the first important part. The second one, the FPOs need visibility, whether they run an input shop, whether they have a custom hiring center, or they have a truck to transport their commodities, or they run a bio input center. So that visibility is, I think, very important. The third, in my opinion, government should recognize FPOs as important players for providing services to their members, and with FPOs, and help them set up a warehousing facility and other support. And finally, I think some kind of a infrastructure for them to perform their role very effectively. So I hope during this webinar we'll be able to discuss some of these issues and see how we'll be able to provide incubation and mentoring support to the FPOs in the not post-COVID but current situation that we are going through. So thank you very much. I'll continue there.
Yeah, thank you, Reddy ji, for sharing APMAS experience in facilitating various activities of FPOs during the crisis, and the kind of support that APMAS received from various stakeholders is really commendable. And I think with this kind of support to FPOs, we will be in a position to benefit not only the FPOs but all the farmers who are deriving benefits from these FPOs. And also your practical suggestions as to what needs to be done to make it more meaningful for the FPOs and also the farmers. Now I would like to request Mr. Mark to discuss about his views and share the experience as to how in Myanmar all the FPOs and cooperatives are coping up with this crisis. Over to you, Mark.
Thank you very much, Ashok, for this introduction. I'm very, it's a great pleasure for me, and I'm very honored to be part of such a distinguished panel. And yes, so today I summarize from our point of view some of the experience we have made in the past few weeks. So I cannot speak for Myanmar as a whole, but just as on behalf of the groups that we are supporting here in the country. As Ashok mentioned in the introduction, the challenges that farmers, that farmer groups, that farmer enterprises face are different from organization to organization, are different from crop to crop that they produce, and also from region to region, even within countries. So that said, I will give a brief introduction what we are doing in Myanmar, which kind of groups are we supporting. Then I will move on to the main challenges that we have observed during the COVID situation. And then I will briefly mention some of the actions that the groups have taken. Yeah, that said, right now we are unable to provide direct support to these groups because of the lockdown situation, and we are not able to go into the field and support the groups directly, but we are in constant communication through digital channels with group representatives. So as DGRV, as Mr. Ashok mentioned, we are the national apex organization of cooperatives in Germany. We have an international department which implements development projects across the world, mainly on behalf of the German government. And here in Asia, we are working on a regional project on behalf of the German Federal Ministry for Economic Cooperation and Development. Our aim here in Myanmar is to promote cooperatives and member-based organizations as vehicles of socio-economic development in the country. So from our point of view, very briefly and very basically speaking, a cooperative is a farmer-owned enterprise, and this kind of entity we are aiming to promote. We have a collaboration with the cooperative department in the Ministry of Agriculture, but I will not go into depth there. We are supporting a number of groups, and I will give a brief introduction which kind of groups. So in Yangon region, we are supporting rice farmer groups that have formed village level farmer groups, and which have established on township level a federation which is registered as a cooperative. They do joint fertilizer provision for the members and deliver this fertilizer to the doorstep of the people. Then as part of this network of rice farmers, there are also some small scale producer organizations which trade rice or paddy and which produce rice seeds. And then we are also supporting a cooperative which produces and processes and markets coffee. These are about 900 farmers which are jointly member of this cooperative. When we look at the specific challenges of these groups that we have observed, there's mainly one big challenge, which was already mentioned in the two presentations before. It's the transportation, and connected to the transportation, the lack of access to traders and markets. As for the rice farmers, usually the traders get into the village and buy the rice of the farmers. In this situation now, this does not take place anymore. On one side, the traders do not get into the village anymore. On the other side, some of the rice mills are also temporarily closed. For the paddy groups or for the seed groups, the clients do not get into the location where they can buy the seed anymore, because some of the villages are locked down for some time, so they are unable to sell their rice seeds. And for the coffee cooperative, the big challenge is not so much connecting to the traders, because they have established a cooperative which buys the coffee from the members, but the transportation has been a challenge, because the previous arrangement with the supporters to transport the coffee for them from the village to the processing facility cannot operate under the current situation. So here we have the risk of agricultural products staying in the village and being stored there and losing quality because they don't have proper storage facilities in the village. How have the groups reacted to this? So we see that the groups have actually reacted quite fast and efficient to some of these challenges. The rice bank network or the Rice Farmers Network has helped some of the farmers to connect to rice mills, which are still open, and help them to build this contact to still be able to sell their paddy. For the seed groups, the network of rice farmers has purchased seeds of these seed production groups and provided delivery service for other rice farmers in the area of the seeds. So through the network, the seed producing groups were able to sell their rice to the network, and the network was able to deliver again to the doorstep of the member farmers. Green Gold, or the coffee cooperative, has been successfully coordinating between the villages, between the communities producing the coffee, in order to pool coffee in regional centers and then deliver the coffee to the warehouse where it can be processed. And another operational challenge which all groups have been handling has been the organizational issue. They have board meetings, they have regular meetings. These meetings cannot take place, so they have been using digital technology like we are using now to communicate, which they have not been done before. Yes, that is just a very brief and quick sum up of some of the actions that the groups have taken by themselves in a relatively short amount of time. Just briefly from my perspective, what are maybe the takeaways or the lessons learned from the point of view of promoting farmer producer organizations, farmer cooperatives, or farmer enterprises? On the one side, I would refer to the title of this webinar. I think the crisis shows the value of these farmer organizations, actually. The farmers have been, the smallholders have been in a very challenging situation, not being able to sell their products, not being able to connect to supply markets, but these networks of farmers have been able to leverage their networks and facilitate exchange, facilitate connection to traders, facilitate delivery of inputs, and facilitate transportation of the products. So from that point of view, I think that the crisis shows that, shows the potential of farmer groups to strengthen the resilience of the communities and to strengthen the resilience of the smallholders in the agricultural sector. Then on the other side, it shows that networks of farmer organizations are a very suitable vehicle also to promote this. So if we support farmer groups, we should always think about strengthening networks and building resilient networks between these farmer organizations, because as the crisis shows, these networks are able to react very fast on these kind of situations. And for support organizations, it's built the resilience of farmers by strengthening the farmer enterprises, by promoting good governance, good management practices, by helping communities to build sound business models on community level, but also on network level. I think that is very important. And as Mr. Reddy mentioned, build capital. The FPOs need capital. They need to build capital reserves in order to invest in the future, but also in order to build their readiness for crises such as the COVID pandemic or any other crisis that can come up in the future. This is very short. I have limited time. I could talk a lot more about many of these points, but maybe I leave it to that point right now. If you have any questions, please feel free to ask me. I'm really looking forward to the discussion after the presentations. Thank you very much for your attention.
Yeah, thank you, Mark. Very, useful, experience sharing. from the FPO sector in Myanmar. And, despite all these, issues, it's good to learn, how various, FPOs, farmer cooperatives are working and trying to address various challenges in a very meaningful way. Thank you so much. There are a large number of questions by the participants. And, of course, because of time limitation, we cannot take up all the questions. We will take up the questions, at the last, after all the speakers have, shared their experience. Okay, now, I think, it's an opportunity to hear Arindamji about his experience and some of the suggestions that he wants to offer in relation to the financial solution for the FPOs. Yeah, over to you, Arindamji.
Thank you. Thank you, Ashok. And thanks, Mark and CS, for a very good overview of micro-level small farmer organization. I'll give a slightly more macro view. I'll talk of two things. First is the synergy between technology and FPOs, FPCs. And second is the challenge of attracting capital. So firstly, as we all know, all smallholder farmer economies, they are extremely fragmented. And we build up aggregation models because of obvious advantage of the power of aggregation to be able to reach out to different markets and to drive in efficiencies. So while FPOs and FPCs is a model of physical aggregation of farmers and the produce, technology offers an opportunity to do a virtual aggregation of farmers and also their produce. Now, however, these two evolving kind of developments and initiatives in India, at least in India and in other parts of the smallholder economy, have a lot of synergy. And I think this is the right time. The COVID has impacted all businesses, including FPCs, including the agriculture sector. It gives a moment for all of us to introspect and to be able to think of ways to make our business more resilient. Now, when we talk of resilience, what exactly does it mean? It means that when one channel of business breaks down, do we have an alternative channel? Can we quickly get information as to what other opportunities are there and quickly act on that? It's extremely important to be resilient in our business planning and to be resilient in whichever way we plan to do business in future, because there can be many shocks. And shocks in the agriculture sector, it happens on a regular basis because of several reasons. So while the physical aggregation model, building up of FPCs, cooperatives has its obvious advantage, and we see those very successful cooperatives in Europe, in the US, and in the developed part. In India and in the developing countries, the new set of modern cooperatives and FPCs which are coming up under a different regulation also have been evolving. And we do see some early successes there, though of course these kind of cooperatives are going to take their own time. But there are many limitations to this model. One is the capital constraint, because they can only get capital from the members, that's equity capital. They are very thinly capitalized. Second is the human resource issue. I mean, we don't have enough talent pool in the rural areas, in the farmlands to be able to service 5,000, 7,000, and now potentially 15,000 FPOs, FPCs. It's a big challenge. A third obvious challenge is even a FPC of 500, 700 farmers in a village in Madhya Pradesh or in Andhra Pradesh, how do they reach out to the market players, financial institutions? How do they effectively do a communication? I think here lies the opportunity for technology, because technology players, by offering digital services and digitization of farmer record, makes FPOs to be extremely successful. While the technology players, the new age agtech companies, they struggle to onboard farmers because it's extremely expensive for them, and there's a trust issue. So our interaction and a relationship between the FPCs and the technology companies would enable digitization, which on a standalone basis for FPOs would be extremely difficult. The technology companies also gets in the best of HR talent into the agribusiness systems, especially in the rural areas in the upstream part, which was hitherto missing. So it fills in some critical gap, and with the digitization of land records, of the farmer records, of the FPO businesses, the ability for tech companies to reach out to different market players, whether they are banks, whether they are input players, or whether they are buyers or processors, becomes extremely efficient, because the tech company be able to connect an FPC to different demand pockets across the country, and also to a large extent be able to provide for the logistics, which for a standalone FPC is extremely difficult. So I do see huge synergy there. We have had a few experiments also in the Indian market where we see technology company and FPCs working together, but it's unfortunately at a very early stage, because is for the FPCs and the FPC stakeholders, it's a lot of them don't understand the potential and power of technology. And second is for technology players to go down and to explain their products, what their capacities are, what their capabilities are, is also challenging. So honest brokering is what is required. And I'm happy to say a lot of such initiatives have already been grounded in the Indian market. And I would strongly suggest for a FPC business to be resilient, that's the way forward. There are many other advantages of adopting technology. I won't get into that now. I will now try to address the capital issue. As I mentioned earlier, one of the restrictions of the FPC model is the thinly capitalized business units that we set up. And because of the thin capitalization, bank loans always becomes a problem, because any typical banking product looks at the business contribution doing for products. There are a couple of suggestions I have. First is, we do hear that a lot of banks are not providing financing. It's only a few NBFCs in the market today which are providing financing, and we seem to portray that there is a supply chain issue, a supply side issue, which there is. There's no denying it. But having said that, let's also discuss the demand side issues. How many of these FPCs are ready to have a business relationship with the financial institutions? How many of these FPCs are aware of at what point of time they need to reach out to which kind of financial institution for what kind of product, and what kind of financial statements they need to showcase, what kind of business and capacities, management skills and governance they need to showcase. So it's extremely important also to build up the capacities from the demand perspective, so that FPCs have an understanding of financial products, what is generally known as financial literacy. And I'm very happy to state that we are starting an initiative with Samunati and Arya to be able to build up if I may use the word, a booklet, which in very simple terms talks about the different banking products which are possible for the FPCs, how they should be applied to, at what point of time, and what kind of preparedness is required. That's extremely important. The other point is, we all talk about working capital loan for the seasonal activities of the FPCs, or we talk of term loans to build up some small infrastructure. The product where even a nascent FPC can tap into, even in today's market, is the post-harvest banking products, what's popularly known as warehouse receipt financing. There are many nuances of that. That the moment the produce is aggregated, then you have a collateral against which financing can be done. There is, of course, there are a lot of ifs and buts in terms of, you need to have the right kind of storage, the secure storage. But then we have companies like Arya Collateral, Argos in Bihar, who are doing a very good job of using technical platforms, and that they also have solutions at the ground level, not only to be able to store the produce, but to be able to link them to the markets. It's very important for all of us working in the FPC space to be able to work with the FPC to build the ability to negotiate with the financial institution, to be able to understand what are the right products for the right. To me, the rationale of a FPC only exists if they can ensure financial services to their members and the markets for the farmers produce. If there is absolutely no rationale, and they will wither away, they lose confidence of their members. Thus, adoption of technology and the ability to reach out to the financial sector, I think, is extremely important, and that's the way forward to go to build up robust, resilient businesses at the farm level. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you very much, Arindam ji. I think some of the key, takeaway based on your sharing is that when one needs to look at the financial, aspects related to FPO, one has to also look at the demand side very clearly, where, there still exist, several gaps. Supply side is one, dimension, but looking at the demand side, is also equally important. And, I really liked your idea of this brokering, facilitation to improve the flow of financial services to the sector. And, the third point that I felt, is very, important, given the, status of the FPO in the country, it relates to, integration of technology in the entire process. I think, you have given us quite lots of food for thoughts, and, we all stakeholders should work together as to how we can, work on these aspects so that we can improve the, finance flow to the FPO sector in a way that can contribute to the growth of the FPO sector. Now, thank you so much, Arindam ji, for very, interesting, insight and sharing by you. Now I would like to request, Pravesh ji for sharing his view in relation to some of his forward-looking, ideas in relation to, using this, COVID crisis for, agricultural reform, and how it could lead to much larger, inclusive growth of rural India. Over to you, Pravesh ji.
Thank you, Ashok, and it was very, very useful to listen to the previous speakers. Now, I think when you say that I should speak about a forward-looking agenda, the issues that need to be addressed are actually all a legacy of the past. So, in a sense, COVID, I see only as an opportunity to perhaps break the pattern of how we've been addressing these issues. And if I could just sum them up in 3 words. So about a decade ago, when I went to SFAC and we started this whole FPO promotion drive at scale across the country. So we used to explain to the state governments and other stakeholders, NGOs and other partners, that we were trying to address the 3 core challenges of smallholder agriculture, which stand today as much as they did a decade ago. How do you give smallholders better access to investments, to markets, and to technology? And we looked at FPOs as a mechanism to address these 3 challenges, to improve the access to investments, improve the access to markets, and improve access to technology. Now, those 3 challenges remain relevant even today. COVID has exposed how, I think, critical it is to look at agriculture beyond the traditional ways of looking at the 3 sectors of the economy. I may point out, and I've said this before, I'm sorry for people who've heard this, I'm going to repeat myself. In the last 2 months plus that we've had this lockdown, the only sector which has functioned with some semblance of normalcy is agriculture. You've had a bumper Rabi harvest, which has been actually harvested by the farmers without much fuss. You actually have above normal early Kharif sowing, that is the government's own figures. You have a fairly normal functioning of the supply chains for Kharif inputs, seed, fertilizer, agrochemicals. And all our major urban centers have continued to receive supplies of fresh vegetables, milk products, poultry products, other livestock products. I think it says something for the resilience of the sector and for the complexity of the supply chains that have been built up, that while industry and the services sector have virtually shut down, except for the government provided services and production, the agriculture sector has continued to function normally, near normally, I would say. And this is despite the fact that we are all aware, and we need not go into that history right now, that the policy support to agriculture in general and to FPOs as an institutional form, it's not perhaps at an optimum level. So COVID, I believe, is a watershed or should be a watershed to convince not just policymakers. Policymakers, I believe, are a very small subset of this larger cohort that we need to address. And the largest segment or the largest stakeholder constituency that needs to be addressed is society itself. Look, this so-called neglect of agriculture, this policy-oriented depression in prices, the implicit tax imposed on agriculture by the export restrictions on most commodities, this is after all accepted by society at large. We would not accept the same restrictions on, shall we say, availability of smartphones or LED TVs. Okay, we would say no, there should be a free import of all these products. We should have the most cutting-edge technology, and of course we should. I'm not against it, but we don't apply the same yardstick when it comes to agriculture and farmers. So maybe COVID is a time when society as a stakeholder, which is, I believe, much bigger than government, policymakers, think tanks, NGOs, companies, all of them put together. Society as an entity has to realize that it's actually agriculture which keeps the very base of life functioning. Because, you know, agriculture is not producing a telephone without which we will not die, but we could actually die without access to food. So agriculture cannot be treated at par with sectors like industry or services because it is a life-producing sector. It is producing goods which are actually life-giving, right? So I hope the sort of existential realities and existential realization that COVID has forced on all human beings. Why are we all hiding in our houses? Because we want to save our lives. Because we realize that our life is the most precious thing. And all our jobs and our cars and our houses, they only are secondary, adjuncts to life. So similarly, agriculture has to be looked at as a sector which is generating the very basis of life, which is food. Now, if we accept that, and we go back to my 3 challenges of then how do we treat this as an opportunity to increase the access of smallholders, especially smallholders who are members of these bodies called FPOs, farmer producers organizations, companies, and I would include even genuine member-based cooperatives as part of this. Like CS said, there are many self-reliant cooperatives which are functioning on the very principles of FPOs. So I would maybe, to make it a little more focused, offer a 5-point sort of agenda. And this 5-point agenda would, of course, fall within the rubric of my 3 pillars of investments, markets, and technology. So the first 2 suggestions are related to investments. Yesterday, some of us, I'm sure, have heard or at least read in the papers this morning of the big financial package announced by the government. And the centerpiece of that package is a very unique instrument, a very innovative instrument, I believe, which is a government guarantee to financial institutions to lend to the micro, medium, and small enterprises without any collateral. Okay, I would say the government should clarify to the banks that FPOs are included in this definition of MSMEs, because after all, what is an FPO except that it is a rural SME? It is a rural, small or medium business. It's an enterprise. And if the coverage of this credit guarantee fund is extended to FPOs, and we can fix a limit of something like 1 crore of working capital to each FPO without collateral, covered by this government guarantee, and there is a moratorium, as we know, of 3 years for the repayment, it could revolutionize the entire FPO space. The basic criteria should be registration under a relevant law, like the Companies Act or a self-reliant cooperative, a membership base of at least 500 plus, so that we don't have fly-by-night sort of outfits turning up to claim this loan. And then I would say we could see the real unleashing of the potential of these FPOs. The second suggestion related to the investment part, and part of the same package announced by the finance minister, is the provision of a window which will provide subordinate debt, which is called tier 2 capital, to a wide range of companies and enterprises. Again, I would say, please include FPCs, and that would of course only apply to FPCs because they are registered under the Companies Act. This subordinate debt, this tier 2 capital, should be used to strengthen the balance sheet of the farmer producer companies. Again, we can fix a limit. We can say a maximum of 50 lakhs, 40 lakhs. I'm fine with some number. But this tier 2 capital would be a huge buffer to these FPOs to be able to then leverage greater working capital from the banking sector. As many of the earlier speakers said, it is finance which is today the biggest roadblock to the realization of the true business potential of the FPOs. And provision of as I said, collateral-free loans, and 2, the provision of subordinate debt, tier 2 capital, will make a big difference in this regard. I now come to my third suggestion, which would fall under the markets category. In fact, my third and fourth are related to marketing. Now, we've read that many states, and I'm not questioning the right or wrong of this decision, but many states have taken some rather drastic steps leading to the complete suspension of all labor laws for a period of whatever 2-3 years. And this is being done to justify attracting new investments in industry and services. As I said, I'm not going to the merits of this argument. Maybe it's a good or bad decision. I think I see a comment saying my voice is breaking. So I'm going to switch off my video. I don't think you need to see me, you need to hear me. So I'm going to switch off my video. Right, I hope that's going to make my... So I had made 2 points. 1 and 2 were about the provision of collateral-free loans under this loan guarantee announced for MSMEs. My second point was the provision of tier 2 capital or subordinate debt. And my third point I'm making now is about marketing. And I'm suggesting that just like some states have suspended labor laws, the central government should suspend all marketing laws. All APMC regulations should be suspended for a similar period of 3 years, just like we suspended the labor laws. Let's suspend the APMC provisions to the extent that they apply to FPOs. Okay, we will not talk about the rest of the players, but let the APMC law not apply to FPOs for the next 3 years. Let them sell to whoever they want at the price that they are comfortable with. We will not question their judgment on who they want to sell to, at what price they want to sell to, because we believe that they are rational and they will, arrive at the right price for their product. My fourth point also relates to marketing, and this is an opportunity which I believe the government has had for many years but not utilized, and that is to use FPOs as compulsory procurement centers for the minimum support price operations. Across the country, the governments, the state governments, and even FCI, they use cooperative societies as procurement agencies, but not FPOs. In my view, this is a great injustice because, as we agreed, FPOs follow the same principles of cooperation as the traditional cooperatives. So why are they not being used as MSP buying centers, as MSP buying partners, which would give a huge support to these institutions in terms of turnover, in terms of their earning, and most importantly, in getting the minimum support price to the members of these FPOs. My final point, which I want to make, is related to technology. And Arindam talked about technology. And let's be very honest here. In the last, I am looking at this for the last 2 decades. In the last 2 decades, as Indian IT has conquered every frontier internationally and, broken into the toughest markets in the West, they have not been able to develop a single technology product. And I say it with great responsibility and with humility. And I've looked at at least a dozen products in my official capacity and now currently in my capacity as an entrepreneur. Not a single technology product has been developed for the agri sector as a whole. Forget about FPOs, which is a game changer in the way that Facebook is a game changer or WhatsApp is a game changer. Okay, we have not been able to find a viable model to either solve those problems or to maybe make money from this sector. And because of that, we find that there is a huge digital divide between the agri sector and the rest of the society and the rest of the economy. Now, this lag is not sustainable in my view. You have to bring that sector at least 50% par with the rest of the economy. So here's my suggestion. Any technology company that is willing to work with FPOs to develop location specific and solution which solve local problems for FPOs should get some sort of a tax break from the government. Now, what should be the extent of the tax break? I'm sure experts have a better view on this. Unless we address this holistically to meet these 3 challenges of increasing access to investments, markets, and technology, COVID or no COVID, pre-COVID or post-COVID, I'm afraid we're not going to have any change in the ground situation. Let me stop here, and if Ashok will throw some questions at me later from the participants, be happy to answer. Thank you so much. Ashok, back to you.
Ashok, you may be on mute.
Ashok, your mic is, mute.
Are you able to hear me?
Yes.
Yeah, okay. I think, there was some issue, some technical issue at my end. So I was not able to see any of you for some time, but now it's coming, right?
Yeah, just continue, please.
Well, thank you, Pravesh Sharma ji. I think, it was a very, insightful suggestions as to what overall, stakeholders, including government policy makers, FPOs, financial institutions, all together should do so that we can make these FPOs much more viable business entities. I like the idea of treating these FPOs equivalent to SMEs, where So thank you so much. Now I think, we have almost, completed the time. We are now going to take up this opportunity for, answering some of the questions. First question, which is of common nature. Can you hear me?
Now we can.
Yeah. So first question that I have identified to be answered by all the panel members, please. The context of small capital base and the small capacity with the FPOs. How the FPO should be in a position to function during this lockdown period. It's a common question to all the panel members.
Do you want me to start, Ashok? I think, as I think Pravesh mentioned, and all of us think, working capital is a serious problem. And I think we are talking about two types of working capital support, or maybe three types, I think Pravesh mentioned. One is equity grant that the FPOs could get from the government, from any particular agency. Second is a loan that they could get. The third is a kind of a loan guarantee fund or support that's available. Fourth, of course, they raise their own capital from the members. So I think these are, there may be need for RBI guidelines. Reserve Bank of India need to issue guidelines for the banks and financial institutions to lend to FPOs, like they did almost 30 years ago to lend to self-help groups. So I think that is something we need a policy, an enabling ecosystem for FPOs to get access to financial services.
Yes, maybe I say something to that question. I think it's probably the most crucial question in the agriculture sector for smallholders, the lack of capital. And of course, there's the one possibility to grow capital. Some of our groups have grown capital, but it takes a very, very long time for smallholders to grow sufficient capital in order to build infrastructure such as storage and to have an adequate buffer for crisis times. So yeah, from that perspective, it's something you need a lot of patience and a lot of time to build this capital buffer. I do wonder if it would be possible to look for different models where there could be a setup of joint venture companies between FPOs, farmer organizations, cooperatives, and other private enterprises. In Germany, I know that cooperatives, several cooperatives can set up capital joint stock companies, which are owned by the cooperatives. But why not seeking for business models where companies could share a common stake in a company which is set up between member-based organizations and these suppliers. Yeah, that's just an idea. I've heard of some models in other countries, but yeah.
Well, I think CS has spoken well about the different requirements. And as Mark said, we need sustenance capital at this point of time, and it's only fair that the suggestions made by Mr. Pravesh Sharma be implemented, because if all sectors are asking for it, agriculture being a core sector, the only sector which needs to function even in a crisis like this so that people are fed, that a special line with all the facilities, whether it's a subordinate debt, whether it's grant capital, whether it's working capital loan be provided. But we should understand this is a one-time facility to get over this crisis. For sustaining growth or growth capital, to access growth capital, I think we need to build up business cases, have the right kind of track record, and be ready to be able to interact with the financial services sector to be able to go forward. That's all I have to say at this point in time.
Okay, thank you everyone for your response to this question. There is another general question. It's about specific challenges that FPOs are facing during this crisis and how they are dealing with it. Of course, we had from different panel members. Do you hear my question?
Oh, can you please repeat the question? I did not hear the question.
We
Did
heard.
you hear my question?
Yes, yes. So I think, Ashok, the challenges I think we already discussed during the course of the webinar. The lockdown posed the challenge of transportation problems, prices crashed, availability of the labor is a major issue, and the kind of transportation, and there is also the problem of police harassment, and certain of the markets closed, APMCs or markets like Azadpur Mandi. So I guess many FPOs. For example, in Chennai, the market, Coimbatore, one of the largest wholesale market, closed down because there were some 200 people who were affected by the COVID-19. So they were tested positive. So there was a total scare and all the vehicles got diverted. And so I think we are still grappling with the issue and the kind of challenges that we are faced today.
Well,
Okay,
thanks.
thank
Yes,
you.
I'll just add one point here. Look, we have never had a crisis of this proportion in our lifetime. And we would expect that FPCs, FPOs would get hit, and they have got hit. Now, when there are supply chain disruptions, when you cannot move the commodity, there is nothing one can do about it. But the good part is, most of the countries, including ours, have moved very quickly to ensure movement of food supplies, agriculture produce. So I would say there has been a hit, and if we estimate, I think half a season in terms of income loss, we can factor into the FPC farmer, yearly kind of revenues, that there will be a hit. We will have to move on to the extent possible, draw on all the special relief which is being provided for COVID-19. There will be a hit. There is no way any business, including an agribusiness, business like a FPO, can avoid that. There will be a hit. We need to accept that and move on.
Okay, thank you, Arindamji, for sharing your views on this particular question. Now we have, another question.
We can't hear you, Ashok.
Can you hear me?
Yeah, now we can.
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Yeah. So there is one question, and I hope it's the last question. how FPOs are managing, their Kharif season, activities at this point in time.
Some of the FPOs, particularly their members, have left harvesting their produce because the get the price for the harvesting. I guess the input supplies is a big issue. Some of the FPOs have their own input shops and they are providing some inputs. But I think the situation is still very, very precarious. And one of the requests that we made to Government of India and the state governments is that all agricultural produce, particularly perishable commodities like fruits and vegetables, government should provide transportation cost that would be able to give some relief to the farmers. So we have actually, as APMAS, with support from GIZ for around 1,600 metric tons of tomato, we have provided transportation cost, which increased the price realization for the farmers through the FPO. I think that could be the kind of ideas that the government needs to think about, in addition to capital in terms of equity grant. One of the things that we propose to the state governments of Andhra Pradesh and Telangana is to release, let us say, 5 lakh rupees to each of the well-functioning FPO as equity grant without really asking them all the questions, so that they could use that money for working capital. So at least 100 FPOs got some working capital released. So these are the kind of initiatives that will be required.
Praveshji, would you like to go?
Well, on the specific question of Kharif preparation, it's a little early for Kharif. After all, we are just completing the harvest and procurement of the Rabi crop. And I know that in the south, things start a little early, but the indications are that so far Kharif preparations are going close to normal. I would not say, as everyone says, things are not normal. Let's accept that. Labor has gone away from many parts of the country where traditionally it was supporting agricultural operations. Now it will be interesting to see how much paddy area in Punjab and Haryana gets affected because the labor from Bihar has gone away. Can it be immediately replaced by machines? I don't think so. There aren't that many machines. So I think as the season goes forward, we'll get an idea. And FPOs are very much part of this larger agri universe. I'm sure that many of the FPO members are going to face these challenges about restricted access to seed, fertilizer, agrochemicals, credit. Let's not forget that, though of course I believe that there will be a credit and a larger package for agriculture separately. And let's hope it covers the essentials like credit and inputs. But I'm sure that even if there is such a package, it will be largely for individual farmers. I don't think that the government is still factoring in FPOs, even though there are now 5,500 odd registered FPOs. They cover between them more than 10 million farmers. I mean, there's one estimate that almost 2 crore farmers, I don't know how reliable this estimate is, but even if it's, 1.5 crore farmers out of the total 9.5 crore farming households, it's not an insignificant amount. That means 10% of our farmers are already now members of some institutional form. That's a very, I would say, positive development. And we should encourage this process, accelerate this process, so that the formalization of the agri sector proceeds led by these FPOs. But as everyone has said, without providing them the necessary policy support, and Kharif is a very good rollout of this support package. I hope that we'll get to see some action in the coming days and weeks. Thank you.
One point, Ashok.
Okay.
Coming Kharif season, just, I think the non-perishable commodities like paddy, maize, cotton, those kind of issues, there is not much. But I think the biggest problem is related to, the perishable commodities where there is a need some kind of a action plan required. But the government is kind of, at least in the states of Andhra Pradesh and Telangana, they are gearing up for providing some of the critical inputs like seed, fertilizer for the farmers through some of these farmers organizations. More push is required at this moment.
Okay, thank you, Reddy ji.
Ashok, you're not audible.
Ashok, are you there?
I think Ashok is facing a problem, a technical problem. So, Ashok, are you back? Or otherwise, on behalf of M-CRIL, we can thank all the panelists and all the members who have joined in.
Yeah, it's raining in Patna at the moment. So quite a lot of problem in internet connectivity. But I think, we have addressed all the questions that I wanted to take up. And I would like to take this opportunity to thank all the panel members and all.
It's gone again.
Arindam, I think you do the honors. It's good enough. It's okay.
Yes, Arindam.
Thank ourselves and thank M-CRIL for organizing this.
Thank you so much, everyone.
Thanks to all the wonderful participants, a huge number. Thank you all for joining. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you once again from M-CRIL.
Thank you. Thanks, Ashok.
Thank you for your attention. Thanks, M-CRIL, for organizing.